I think we're live. Yay! We're in the same place.
Yeah.
Like sisters.
We're at my house this time.
Yep.
And we are going to be talking about The Remains of the Day. I got this book for $1.99 on eBay.
So you can
good.
too.
eBay is like kind of this thing that I forgot about. And then I realized it's a great place to buy books.
So tip, you can probably find East of Eden for like 15 cents there if you want to do that.
I got mine on eBay
January.
for $5.
Yeah. So our January book, we'll talk about this at the end, is East of Eden, but you could probably find that for pretty cheap if you wanted to buy it.
But I bet libraries have it in stock like all the time.
Yeah, which is why we are kind of switching between newer books and older books so that you have more of a chance to check them out from the library. Because that's actually what I do. I rarely buy books. I always check out from the library. So it's nice to have something less new all the time.
Hey, Alyssa. And Allie.
We're just waiting for some...
We'll give it a minute before we start. But hopefully everyone had a good Christmas.
Yeah, we're hoping that you didn't feel too sad that we pushed the book club back till today.
Yeah, we weren't about to do that on Christmas.
And just so you know, starting next month in January, we're going to be writing a lot more on our website than we did in December, because December is nutso.
We kind of took the month to just take it easy for December, so thanks for staying with us, and we
hope you enjoyed the shortness of the book as well.
Yeah, we'll have some more blog posts coming up in the new year.
So get excited. Well, let's start with a recap then.
Okay.
About the book. Do you want to?
You do it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So the main character of Remains of the Day is Stevens, the butler, and the whole book is told from his point of view, mostly as he's writing in his diary. I think it takes course over a week, and he's on a road trip through England, the English countryside, to go visit an old colleague, Miss Kenton, who used to live in
she was the housekeeper of where he was the butler.
And if you've ever watched Downton Abbey, it's really helpful to understand the dynamics of a lot of what he talks about in the book. But as he's going on this road trip, he's reflecting on his career as a butler and his relationship with Miss Kenton and his relationship with Lord Darlington, who was his employer, and his new employer, Mr. Faraday, I think is his name. Mm-hmm. So he's reflecting on his life and his career as a butler and his relationships with others. And it is a really different book, I think, than what a lot of people are used to. It's not very fast-paced.
Yeah, I haven't read a book like this either in a really long time or ever. Like, the tone of the book is really, like, introspective, kind of slow. Mm-hmm. And, like, I think people might have the complaint that, like, nothing happens in this book. But it's really kind of just his own, like, musings. And it's kind of, like, episodic, where he'll, like, talk about one topic, like banter, or, like, witticisms, or whatever he calls it. And then he'll kind of move into a new thought bubble about regret, or... So it's kind of like episodic, just like moving around his thought process, kind of.
And so if you found it slow or maybe not as exciting as you might have wanted.
What did I just do?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to keep talking. Sorry if you can't see us. We're going to just
comment if you can't see us. Oh, you know what? I think I flipped it.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we're back.
Okay.
We're waving at people as you're joining. So, if you felt like it was kind of slow, I think that actually adds to the themes of the book, where it's very much an introspective, thinking about your own life. It's thinking about thinking and thinking about memories, and I think that's an important theme. So that's kind of the recap of what happens in the book. As far as, like, plot points, he and Miss Kenton do meet for lunch at the end, and he actually has a kind of a come apart.
Yeah, and it's like, doesn't say he was crying, but he was, like, crying. He was, like, having a breakdown a little bit. Yeah. In his dignified way.
Yes. let's talk about dignity.
Okay.
Okay, so in our poll question we asked, which do you think was more important to Stevens? Dignity or loyalty? And
it came out to be 50-50 among you guys. And we were just talking, like, hey, it came out to be 50-50. And I was like, yeah, I was more on the side of dignity. And she's like, oh, I was on the side of loyalty. So it was like, oh, we are also 50-50.
Also 50-50.
So.
But I think it's actually pretty intertwined.
Yeah, and then I think towards the end he kind of realizes that, like, his amount of loyalty, like blind loyalty, isn't very dignified. Like, they are definitely intertwined.
Yeah, I think that big realization is the key theme of the book and also the key moment for the character in the book. So what happens, spoiler alert, is that we find, not because Stevens tells us outright, but because he records different conversations that he's been a part of throughout the years, or conversations with Lord Darlington, that Lord Darlington was a Nazi sympathizer and was part of the beginning of World War II and meeting with people who were really influential within the Nazi regime. And so you find that out, and you find that he's been supporting it. He being Stevens, kind of, in a way, because he was so supportive of Lord Darlington, and he's having these realizations, and he, like Jesse said, is coming to the conclusion, like, this blind loyalty is actually not dignified.
It's almost like he was betrayed a little bit, because someone that he, like, loved and trusted so much, he realized wasn't right all the time.
Yeah.
So I think that would probably be a hard realization, especially if you lived your whole life that way.
Natalie has an interesting comment. She says, I like the progression of, at the beginning he was very protective, and as he travels further away he admits to more and more negative aspects of his former employer. And
aren't there even parts where he, like, denies that he, like, knew Lord Darlington?
Yeah.
Like, I think you don't really know that yet, but then you kind of learn it later that maybe he started to get kind of, like, disenchanted with him.
Yeah. If you guys have any comments about the dignity or the loyalty aspects and themes of the books, just comment them and we'll share them. Something that I thought was really interesting was that his idea of dignity was to be always prepared and be a great butler by basically, like, turning off your human emotion.
Yeah, he called it, like,
robot.
inhabiting his role as a butler. Like,
right.
Becoming it, totally.
Yeah. You, like, take on this persona, and then you yourself, you don't matter, you don't count, and you are the butler. And his idea of dignity in his professional life actually leaks, I think, into his personal life, which makes his relationships, as he's talking about them, even more heartbreaking, because you find out that he doesn't know how to not be that dignified. And I think his sense of what dignity means is skewed, but in his mind he is dignified all the time, and that has led him to missing out on relationships with Miss Kenton, for one, and being blinded against Lord Darlington and what
even
he was
father,
doing.
He had, like, such, like, a cold relationship with his father. It was, like, very much like a business, professional relationship with his own dad.
One of you guys commented on, you sent us a DM earlier, DLI said she was really mad that he didn't really grieve his father at all. Like, it was very, like, oh, this happened, and
he, like, became the main butler now, and that's, like, what he was thinking about. It's almost like he just didn't know anything different. It's almost like he was, like, brainwashed or something. It kind of reminds me of, like, those stories you hear of, like, North Koreans where they don't know any different than their little bubble that they live in, and it's just completely normal.
Yeah.
And they're just kind of flat. I'm not saying every North Korean person is like this, but, like, how they're represented in some books and, like, movies I've seen, it's just, like, they don't have any, like, sense of personal identity. And it's kind of, like, the same thing that went on here, I felt like.
Well, Little Bit of Bliss says, I wanted to badly hear more emotion all the way through, but I realized that was the point.
Yeah. He was, like, being very restrained, like, the whole time.
And I think that's part of why the book is kind of tough to read at some parts, because that's not naturally how we as a culture are in America. And if
Yeah.
you're somewhere else, you may speak to this, or anywhere. Anyone can speak to this. But I think that's just not part of, we are not part of the England
that culture
of the early 20th century, where it was like, restrain, no emotion, don't show this, everything's proper. That's not our jam so much. So that, I think, is actually captured really well in the book.
Yeah, especially how his new, like, master is American, and he's all about, like, cracking jokes and, like, being witty. Mm-hmm. And he's just, like, no idea what you're talking about. I need to study how to be witty. Like, I don't know if it was, like, intended that his new master was American, but it just, like, kind of shows, like, a stark contrast of, like, the two cultures. But also, like, he's also just aging. Like, Stevens is just becoming an older man, and, like, I even kind of feel like this, like, I'm kind of separated from, like, the younger teenagers, and I, like, can't keep up with their slang, no idea what they're talking about sometimes, and, like, the music, like, I found out who Post Malone was, like,
I was just gonna say Post
a month
Malone.
ago.
I took a class with freshmen during the summer, and we were going around saying our favorite musicians, and I was like, Taylor Swift, and they were like,
yeah.
That, okay, old-fashioned, and then they were like, Post Malone, and I was like,
yeah,
I don't know who that is.
Just learned who he was, like, in the past couple of months. So, I can kind of relate to Stevens in feeling just like, okay, like, I am out of touch with, like, what's happening. So, I just thought that was kind of interesting, and it probably gets worse as you get older, so maybe I need to study up on witticisms.
I think that theme, though, of kind of being out of touch and aging and the winter of his life, I think it's a kind of a common theme in literature, but the way that it's done here is really special, I think, because he is coming to realizations of what his life is amounting to, and I don't think he's very happy with the result.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's definitely, like, a theme of regret that comes up. Like, when he realizes, like, that Miss Kenton was in, like, an unhappy marriage, and he's, like, he's almost getting to that thought that, like, I could have been with her, you know? And so he kind of, at the end of the book is, like, isn't it, like, a short chapter? I just, like,
I think
just barely, like, looked over it, but it's, like, just sad. Like,
it's just sadness.
He's just being like, you know what? I worked my whole life, and I didn't do anything else. It's, like, sad.
Yeah.
But.
And I also think it's interesting, so we asked the question, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but did Stevens change from the beginning to the end?
I'd say yeah.
And you would say yeah?
Mm-hmm. I would say he became more self-aware.
Yes,
I would agree with that. But he didn't make any actionable changes.
Yes. So you guys can comment if you think that he actually made a change as a character throughout the book. But I want to say yes, and I think you're right that he did become more self-aware, but the thing that at the end I was like, was that he was talking about how he was like, okay, I'm just going to go home to my new employer, Mr. Faraday, and I will continue to work on banter. Yeah. And I was like, you're doing the same thing you've been doing your whole life. You're just going back into the same cycle instead of having, like, dinner parties for Nazis, it's learning to banter. You're just doing whatever you are told to be doing under the guise of dignity. Yeah. So I don't think he changed that much.
Yeah, that's true. He didn't make a change in his life. He just, and even, I guess his, like, self-realizations weren't enough to make him change either. Yeah. Maybe he just realized he didn't have time left or something.
Caroline said, I don't think he changed, but I think he wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what I was getting at, is, like, and that's kind of how he was his whole life, is he'd have these thoughts and then never step out and do anything about it. Yeah. And Caroline actually gave me a comment earlier today, and she was talking about the tone of the book, how it was very, like, Downton Abbey, and it took her, like, a minute to realize that it was, like, his own musings. And I think at first, like, for a lot of us, it's kind of confusing because he's jumping from the present day to the past a lot. But then she made the comment that, like, it becomes very natural once you get into the book. And I agree with that. Like, you're like, okay, you're on this road trip, and then you're talking about Miss Kenton. But it's kind of like when you're driving and your mind, like, wanders as you're driving. Totally. That's kind of how the book feels.
Which is interesting, because that's the setting. Yeah. Is just meandering through his life and through England.
Yeah.
Jordan said, in a DM earlier, she said, I think he did change inside because of his life regrets, but he isn't actually willing to do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what he's saying.
It's a good, like, life lesson, too, because I think sometimes we do that. We're like, oh, I really wish I was this certain way, or I had this certain skill or habit, but it's like, you have to make these, like, daily actionable changes if you want to see a change in your life.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's a good lesson.
Sarah says, I don't know if he thinks he can change. He doesn't even really view himself as a human. Even at the end, he is observing others embracing life.
Yeah, it's like he never really self-actualized ever in his life.
Mean, it's like haunting, almost. Yeah. The whole book. It's like, it's beautiful to read, and it's very introspective. And at the end, I was like, oh my gosh, it's very tragic.
Yeah.
It's tragic.
But it is like, it's important to read those books. It's important to read sad stories, too, in addition to all the other books. And this author, he won the Nobel Prize for Literature.
This year.
In 2017.
Oh, 2017.
Yeah, last year. So if you like this book, have you read any of his others?
I've read Never Let You Go.
Okay.
And it was good.
So, yeah, he's like a very famous and proficient author, so if you liked this book,
there are
he has a
many
big
other books.
stack of books that you could read, which I probably will, because I like this book a lot.
Yeah, and we will write a blog post that has other recommendations for books like this, and in like this, we mean thematically, and also, like, ones that have, like, major Downton vibes, and also ones that are, told in the same sort of narrative style. Because there are a lot of different ways, and they're not all so, like, whoa, heavy.
Yeah, and she was telling me that you're reading this, like, a horror book that's, like, set in the same time period of, like, the English manners right after, like, post-war type stuff. So there's a lot of books that, like, follow different
Yeah, so if you love the setting, or if you love the style, or if you just love the author.
There's so many things you can read. Yeah. Is there any, like, wrap-up comments we have about this book?
Not really.
I feel like
that we kind of hit them all already.
Yeah. It's kind of just a good, like, sit-down, introspective book. Yeah. And so it's okay, that's a little sad.
We hope you really liked it. We hope you liked that it was short. And, again, we try to keep this to, like, 20 minutes, like, as long as an episode of something.
Yeah.
So, if you have any last comments, you can absolutely message us or text us if you know us or whatever, and we'll put together a blog post recap with the video of this discussion, and you can continue having conversations there. And our January book is East of Eden. So,
what's the horror book called that you're reading?
Oh, the horror book is called The Little Stranger. I don't know the author off the top of my head. Sorry.
The Little Stranger. There you go.
There is a TV series or movie coming out about it. I don't. Anyway. So, East of Eden for January. It's kind of long. So, we picked it so you could start reading during the holiday break before you get back into the chaos of the regular life in January.
So, I'm going to have to
get
going because I haven't started East of Eden yet. So.
I have, and it's so good. You guys are going to love it.
I've heard nothing but good stuff about it, so it'll be exciting.
Thanks for watching our book club. We love having you guys talk about books with us. It's so fun. We do it all day long anyway, so we're glad that you guys want to do it with us too.
Yeah, and thanks for all your comments and participation, and we will see you guys next month on the 25th.
Yep, 25th.
Yep. Okay.
Bye.